Okay.
Went to college at Florida State for a couple years.
Right.
And then transferred out to University of San Diego.
Nice.
That was probably the start of the whole real estate construction world for me. My teacher out there, Dr. Mark Reedy, was actually ex-president for Fannie Mae.
Oh,
so
wow.
that was
I
interesting.
didn't know that.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
incredible.
And at the time, he actually asked me to be president of the Student Builders Association. And you got to remember, I grew up in a situation where I was very blessed in a lot of different ways, but my father was not a construction guy.
Right.
So I still to this day don't even know how to change the oil in my car or anything like that. So, but anyway, so I started doing really good in his classes, Dr. Reedy's classes. And so he kind of took a liking to me and we created a relationship, and it was just something I was good at. So anyway, so that kind of morphed into being interested, and then some internships in entrepreneurial type companies. One was called Myers Group.
Okay.
Which was basically, think of a consulting group that would kind of go in, and when there's big master plan developments,
Right.
they would do a lot. So I would be kind of the guy doing some of the research, printing the papers out, giving them to the people.
How old were you at this point?
I was 19.
Wow.
Yeah. So you.
Holy
Yeah.
cow.
Yeah.
And that's a good question, because I mean, just being totally honest, I had no clue what I was doing.
Right.
I had no clue about anything. I'm the president of the Student Builder Association. I really don't even know how to build anything. So it was more just like kind of putting myself out there, going through the motions.
Yeah, but the professor had to see something. There had to have been a conversation. There had to have been a
Yeah.
homework assignment or something. And he was like, "Hey, wait a minute. This is my guy."
You know,
Do you
I
remember,
should
was there a
ask him.
moment,
I'd
or-
like to think that, hey, I could put my pen, you know, exactly this is what it happened, and kind of change course. I don't know exactly. I will say this though, I was an average student growing up. You know, kind of like back then you could get a 3.0 and your
Right.
parents were happy, and that was good, well rounded and that kind of
Right.
thing. So I was
Back in the
definitely I was definitely that guy. You know, I think I got a 3.3, so that was kind of good.
Right.
But you know, when I got into the real estate classes at University of San Diego, I just started doing a little bit better, and a lot of them were not like multiple choice. It was kind of, you know, you had to write
Yeah.
things out, and I don't know if you guys remember, there was these blue books.
Yeah.
So anyway, so
Yeah.
that's kind of where it just started getting easy for me. So it was the first time in life that I kind of looked at school as like, wow, I don't mind going to this class. It's pretty easy, and I didn't have to like stress to get through it. So anyway, so that happened. Then I surfed a lot in between.
Of course, you're in San Diego. Of course you did.
did a trip down in the South Pacific, and so we hit, you know, Fiji, New Zealand,
Oh, wow.
Australia, Maldives, and so that was a good time in life. It also helped me at that time. I remember, you know, we were surfing a lot, and when I mean a lot, like, you know, basically 8 o'clock in the morning till 6 o'clock at night, trying to eat in between, you know, eating 5,000 calories just so you're not like bonking,
Exhausted out there,
basically, yeah. But I remember one time in Australia, my brother and I were surfing in a place called Byron Bay. And the next day he's like, hey, let's go. And I'm like, man, I can't. And he was like, what's wrong? And I remember I was literally kind of teary-eyed at a point.
Right.
And I'm like, I don't know. I don't want to. And he's like, are you okay? And I'm like, yeah. I'm like, you go today, I'll be fine. And so I just remember like feeling a weird, like an emptiness almost.
Right.
And so what I did that day is I went to the public library. And I
Wow.
just decided to read. And so for 2 days straight, I just read books.
What'd you read?
One of them was Kiyosaki.
Oh, yeah.
What's
Yeah.
that?
Rich Dad, Poor
Yeah,
Dad.
Rich
Yeah.
Dad Poor Dad
Robert
was one of
Kiyosaki,
them. That was actually, I think, it was only 2 days, so I was kind of just reading that book, to be
Right.
honest with you.
Yeah.
But my point for bringing that up was that it was when a lot of kind of guys talk about now, oh, well, wouldn't it be fun to just go to an island and hang out or go to a boat? You know,
Oh, yeah.
the retirement kind
Yeah.
of talk. You know, I always remember that feeling that I had of emptiness, and the best way that I describe it at this time in my life was that I just felt like my brain was going to mush a little
Yep.
bit, and I wasn't
Completely
using my
understand
talents
that.
Oh, yeah.
properly. So I guess that was kind of like a blessing in disguise, because it's like, hey, yeah, it's cool to surf, but it's not cool to surf every single day.
Absolutely.
Right? And so I think that kind of lends itself to balance in life and things like that. So
Yeah.
with that, came back to Tampa.
So hang on, you just threw out a lot, man.
That
We can-
was
Sorry.
No, that was a sweet. That was
Absolutely.
We could dive into that. Go ahead.
what Joe's like strength in my eyes, because Joe and I have had, you know, a few conversations over the last couple of years. And so what he's really good at is being able to make people feel comfortable
Right.
and being able to be really agile in conversation. And I've just something that I've observed with you. So, I mean, that is so applicable in so many different industries. It just
Absolutely.
so happens that you followed your passion in construction.
Right.
I mean, had it not been construction for Joe, I promise you he would have still
Succeeded in something else.
been.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Gary V talks about having to have noise around him.
Mm-hmm.
I'm one of those people that have to have noise. I moved to Tortola for about 6 months.
Okay.
Whenever I was 19 years old.
Yeah.
Okay, and the I got there, shook off the jet lag. Can you imagine me just sitting?
No.
Okay, so even back then, I got there and I thought I was just going to be able to kind of take it easy, do a little bit of construction, all that kind of stuff, and just live that beach life. About 3 days in, I'm like, man, what a family that I'm good friends with since 5th grade. I'm like, what do we do now?
Driving yourself mad.
I can't just sit here. Are you kidding me? We're going to the beach again? There's got to be something else we got to do. Sounds like the same thing happened with you. As much as you love doing that, something clicked in your head and said, look, man, we can't be idle. We got to have that noise.
Yeah.
Got to have those things. Got to have those things going.
No, for sure. We hired a guy recently that, he's kind of been out of the game, so to speak, for the last 4 or 5 years. And I asked him, I said, hey, what's making you come back? And I go, for real, what's making you come back into the industry? And he goes, to be dead honest with you, he goes, I want the headaches again.
Yeah.
And I was like,
Problem solving.
Get that.
And so again, I think a lot of, the headache, so to speak, or, the noise kind of to you and what Gary Vee are saying is just, it's also just that perspective of wanting to feel engaged and be around something. And,
Be relevant.
You mentioned the word passion, and you said passion about construction,
Yeah.
I actually, passion is a word I struggle with.
Right.
Because I just think the way that it gets
fleeting.
messaged sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
the younger generation, hey, do what you're passionate about.
Right.
And so sometimes, like, what I like to say to guys is like, hey, find out what you don't like.
Yeah.
Like, sometimes it's easier to find out what you don't like compared to what you do like.
Totally.
And so, especially
And what you
from,
like changes.
Yeah. And from the age of 18 to 25, I mean, to me, it's a beautiful time in life to figure out what you're not good at and what you
Right.
don't like.
Right.
And to me, that's easier than trying to, like, hey, I'm going to say I like this, and now I feel like I need to stick with it. And then you're changing majors, you're doing all these different things. So for me, it was never about I'm passionate about construction or I'm not.
Right.
And it also just had to do with what you're good at. And
Yeah.
so for me, I kind of realized that I was decent at kind of what I call connecting the dots.
Yeah.
So, okay, real estate, right?
Right.
So I want to sell a house. Well, how do you know the person? Is it a good use of your time? I learned a long time ago, you make more money in life saying no than yes.
Right.
There was a guy out in California that I met that was a real estate broker, and he literally said, he goes, the first question that I ask any single client that I have in terms of listing their house
Right.
is, do you need, not want,
Absolutely.
do you need to sell the house in the next 30 days?
Yeah.
If the answer was yes, he would take the listing. If the answer was no, he would share it with his team.
Yeah, sure.
And so, and everyone was kind of like, well,
Yep.
why are you crushing it? Why are your, every single metric he was getting better, right? His use
Right.
of time, because at the end of the day, we all want work-life balance. We really only want to work 50 hours a week, or should. Anybody that says they're working 60, 70, 80 hours a week and they're bragging, to me, that's kind of like, that's not.
Yeah, Justin talks about how efficient people are with their time all the time,
Yeah.
saying that
Yeah.
same exact thing. So we hear this actually from the high performing people that we deal with. We hear this a lot. Are you committed to winning, or do you want to win? Because there's a big difference between
Huge
the two.
difference.
Yeah.
And so that broker going and sitting down at that listing appointment was seeing if that seller was committed to getting the house sold, or if they just wanted to get the house sold.
Right.
Yeah.
Not.